Now, a look ahead to the budget speech this week. One of the big issues, right, is unemployment in the country. There are some jobs that in some instances do go unrecognized. For example, you think about the jobs that are created under the Social Employment Fund that we hardly speak about, and it prioritizes projects, for example, that directly benefit communities in areas like nutrition, education, and gender-based violence prevention, among others. Let's explore this further now and speak to Bridget Hannah, who is the Innovation Director at DG Murray Trust. Good evening to you, Bridget, and thank you so much for your time. I mean, this evening, right, we were in conversation with a number of people talking about their expectations ahead of the budget speech. A lot of them speak about economic growth, how this is going to be important in order to ensure that it creates jobs and get a lot of young people out of the woods. Let's just start with the Social Employment Fund, right, and its significance, because some people simply aren't aware of it.
Absolutely. So the Social Employment Fund was launched as part of the presidential employment stimulus. And what we've seen is how public funds have been unlocked to then support strategic implementing partners, which are civil society organizations. And that has unlocked funds to a further 1,000 community-based organizations across the country, as you said, providing social work opportunities. So things that are contributing towards community building, whether it be in climate adaptation, after school programs, supporting education. These really are the jobs that the market doesn't support, but contribute so much to the health of our communities.
And when you look at, the fact that the markets do not support this, and one would then wonder, because these are the backbone of the communities, why is that?
Well, and this is why public employment is so important and why we're so hopeful to see an increase and a sustained budget allocation, not just for 1 year, but over the MTEF, to the Social Employment Fund and to other public employment programs. Because for so many young people, and if we just think young people between 15 and 24, 33% of young people in this age bracket aren't in employment, education, or training opportunities. I heard you speaking about NSFAS a bit earlier. And it's so important that these young people specifically have an opportunity to be economically included. And when you don't have the education foundation and that opportunity to study further, the opportunity to be able to engage in meaningful work gives you a sense of dignity and inclusion in not just the economy, but in society. And when the market doesn't allow for these sorts of jobs, it's so important that public funds are unlocked for these young people, not just young people, but 80% of people in South Africa taking up public employment are the youth.
And it also speaks to the poverty crisis in the country as well. And listening to what you're saying, and of course, lots of reading on some of the jobs that have been created here, it's very clear that to come out of the woods, whether it's for young people, whether it's for the entire value chain of society who are unemployed, we are not going to have to look at a single solution. We need to diversify in order to be able to deal with this crisis.
It's so true. And one of the most exciting things for those of us who support public employment is the catalytic impact of public employment. So what we see is every rand spent on an employment or a work opportunity also unlocks other goods. So if one thinks about a young person working in a school, they are receiving a meaningful work opportunity, but they're able to receive training that also supports educational outcomes. And if we think about this in the agricultural sector, if we think about this in any of the other sectors supported by the Social Employment Fund and other public employment programs, we're seeing public funds and public rands doing double the work.
And respond at the same time to the social needs as well.
Absolutely. What we see and again, I do have a bias towards economic inclusion for young people, but the benefits are broader. But what we know is that the greatest predictor of continued work is first work. and in a space where so many young people and people in South Africa in general are just looking for an into the job market, it seems so important to think about how we can use public funds and leverage public funds to provide a meaningful a first work opportunity. But then I think to the point that you just raised now is to think about what happens after that.
Yeah.
So if we think about public employment, one, as a social safety net to alleviate poverty, but then also to think about the effects of that a side hustle that you might be able to start with that small bit of that stipend that you may have, or the social connections you're able to build while you're in a public employment program that then allows you to think differently about your future thereafter. So I think it's so important to think about the unlocking public finance in this budget, not just the moment for providing the work opportunity, but to think about what does it unlock, both in terms of continued economic inclusion, but also, and this is what the Social Employment Fund has taught us, is the impact on community. So many of these job opportunities are also created in economic deserts where there wouldn't be work opportunities otherwise. And that again is a magic of a project like the Basic Education Employment Initiative as well, which supported young people in schools across the country. And also the Social Employment Fund, which, as I mentioned earlier, has supported a further 1,000 community-based organizations who are situated in every single community across the country.
And you do have, though, briefly, Bridget, as a final question, then others who are saying if it's an employment opportunity, it's not a job, it's not something that is sustainable, you need to create more permanent employment. How do you respond to those?
Well, first of all, I think that particularly if we think about public finance supporting public employment programs, we have to think beyond just the stipend and just the job. We really have to be pushed creatively to think about how do you unlock the social good of work? So how do you enable people to apply their own creativity to what work might look like, rather than just thinking about jobs? I think if we think about jobs, we limit our creativity to thinking about the multiplying and catalyzing effect of being involved in work. And what do we embed to make sure that that work opportunity is meaningful and that it contributes to society? I think then what we're going to see is the more catalytic impact of public funds spent on public employment programs, as opposed to thinking about a job as an end in itself.